Happy New Year, people, and welcome to Junkyard Theory, Season 6. We've been out of touch for a while, been busy with quite a few projects, but we're back, and 2026 is going to begin with Dylan Clock. So, unless you guys have been living under a rock, you've obviously come across the amazing horror short Portrait of God, released in 2022, which I absolutely loved, and I am honored to have Dylan here in the studio with us. Dylan, welcome and congrats on Portrait of God getting picked up for the feature treatment.
Thank you so much. I appreciate, like I said before, I appreciate you having me on, and excited to talk about it a little bit and kick off the new year.
It's going to be a big one.
It is, yeah, for both of us.
Hell yeah. So I wanna go back to the very beginning. You've been making films for quite a while. Tell me your origin story.
Sure. Yeah, I started making films when I was like 9 years old, and we were living overseas. We were in Germany at the time, and I was like, I was a kid who really wanted to write, really wanted to draw. I wanted to do a bunch of these things that I wasn't quite able to nail on their own, or I wasn't finding enough satisfaction on their own. And so eventually I got a camera and was doing like still photography with it. And I decided to try shooting some short films, and those were very much not horror. They were in like the superhero actiony kind of comic booky world, and they were just awful, as they should be at that age as you're starting out. But I was really annoyed about how bad they were because I recognized for some reason at that age that like they were terrible, and I wanted them to be really good, and I wanted them to the audience to respond well to what I was showing them, and I could tell they weren't. And so at the same time, I was getting into horror stuff just separately, like reading Goosebumps and family members who were into Stephen King or horror movies showing me that kind of stuff, and I started to realize watching and reading some of those things, specifically watching horror films, I started to realize how how much they could do with so little, how simple those stories were.
Yeah.
And also not long after, short films like Lights Out were coming out. These short films that were put online that were like 3 minutes, really simple, really creative, and really inspiring. And so I started to kind of shape my short film exploration more in that direction. And I just started to put them online and continued to put them online. And then I went to school in upstate New York where we shot Portrait of God in 2022. And that just was one that I put online that people responded really well to, and opened a lot of doors. And now working towards that future version. So that's the long and short of my origin story.
That's the recap.
That's the recap. Yeah.
What was your favorite Goosebumps book? I'm curious because for
That's a
for a
good
lot of
question.
millennials, I guess, for me personally, my
Yeah.
intro to all things horror, I think, was from the cover art of the
Yes.
Goosebumps books.
Yes. It's so yeah. There's this YouTube video I watched the other day that was like talking all about the artist and the art. It's like a
Mm.
25-minute video. It's actually so interesting. But yeah, I'm trying to think. I was really into the Haunted Mask books, which
Oh,
those in specific,
yeah,
and I know they had like the TV, the series, and I those are like the scariest things I'd ever seen at that age. So that was also really exciting and an introduction to
this is from
horror.
the late '90s, the late
Yes,
'90s TV
yes.
show. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
was just watching them on like YouTube and stuff, but trying to watch as much as I could. I think Haunted Mask is probably what I would say, but I mean, like Night of the Living Dummy books. Like I don't know. I have a strong affinity for a bunch of them. What about you? Do you have like one or a
I
couple?
I've always been fascinated with cryptids, so I would say
Mm,
the Abominable Snowman of Pasadena.
yeah,
I really
yeah.
like that one, and the headless. There was a headless boy. I don't know if the title is that, but there was a cover where you had this guy, a dude,
Uh-huh.
walking down the steps with his head in his hand. It's a
Oh, yes,
ghost.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
I don't know if I read that one. I was all over the place with them. Like I definitely
yeah,
didn't get all of them, but um, yeah, some of them were really dark. Like there were a couple that I was like, this is right on the edge. But I mean, I love
yeah.
that about it. So
I mean, that's kind of like the fun thing with horror, right? Like you can have standalone stories, and you don't necessarily need to connect them all together. Like
yeah,
it's like you're not necessarily building a superhero universe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and the range is also so interesting. Like there's not, I mean, there's definitely range in other genres, but there's like with horror, there's like kid friendly horror, which
Mm,
seems completely contrary to what horror is. But like, no, it's like a pretty wide umbrella. It's just like dark and spooky things. And I think a lot of kids, interestingly, watching, and I was this way, and I'm curious if you were this way, watching like movies as a kid, even movies that were like, Disney movies or something that's for kids. I always was like, fascinated by the villains in those movies. Like that was always the exciting thing
yep.
when the villain was on screen. And
Yep.
villains in those movies are always a little scary. And I feel like that's like the first seed of getting into spooky stuff of entry level horror, if you will. Um, but yeah,
That
did
is
you
so
have
true.
that? Were there any like
Yeah.
horror villains for you, or children's
Um,
movies villains
ch
rather?
children's movies, villains. I can't pick somebody off the top of my head, but ever since I was a kid, I've always been fascinated with Dracula. I think he is
Okay,
to date like the coolest.
he has a lot of
Cool.
aura.
Yeah, a lot of aura.
He does.
I mean, the story is only as good as your villains. So
Yes, that's
that's like
true.
I think even as kids, not necessarily knowing about storytelling, we kind of gravitate towards that because the story like it just seems like I think like when the protagonist wins in the end. If your
Yeah,
villain's scarier, the win feels stronger, I guess.
totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with horror movies now too. Like generally speaking, we want the good guys to win, but we also want it
Yes.
to be as brutal as possible or scary as possible leading up to that moment. So, um, yeah, it's funny. It definitely tracks from childhood stuff to the stuff we're watching now.
100%. 100%. Uh, with Portrait of God, that being the project that kind of blew open the doors for you, what was it like when the call came from Hollywood?
It's interesting because it was so we released the short in 2022 at the end of 2022, and um, my experience from that point to when we put out the announcement a couple weeks ago that we were doing it with Ghost House, Monkey Paw, and Universal was it had a bunch of checkpoints along the way that were
Mm,
very exciting, but it wasn't like one phone call that was like, "Hey, we're doing this now. Go, go, go! Like you're in." Um, it was definitely a longer road to get it to that point. So along the way, what it kind of looked like was we released the short. I have a close buddy who is a horror YouTuber, short film maker. Um, Named Sam Evenson. He's done a bunch of great shorts that I'm sure people in the short horror community have seen. But he saw Portrait of God and he really responded to it, and he asked to send it to a producer friend of his named Joe Russo. And so we hopped on a call together, and Joe said he wanted to send it to some production companies. And I was obviously like really excited about that. That was like the first thing for me. So I said yes, absolutely. Let's go out and see what we can do. And Joe sent it to Ghost House Pictures, which is Sam Raimi's company, and they were interested pretty much right away, which was that was very exciting and surprising. And so we started talking to them, and then we started talking to them with Sam Raimi. So that's where it was like, okay, this is like they're actually very interested, which is really
this is
exciting.
serious.
Yeah, 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 and that was crazy, and that was very surreal. And then we started working with them, trying to put together a pitch for the project,
Mm,
and then that's when a bunch of difficulties came up circumstantially, like the strike that happened, the Hollywood strikes in 2023. So it ended up being a couple of years of like figuring out how we were gonna both do that project and sell that project and get it out. And it was only in June of 2025 last year that we sent it out, and Jordan Peele's company Monkey Paw was interested in working with Ghost House and bringing it to Universal. And so there were checkpoints along the way. Long story short, like it wasn't one phone call, but it was a couple of very exciting calls over the past couple of years, and it's been very surreal to see that people are interested in getting it to the next step.
you had two of the biggest names in horror: Sam Raimi from the Evil Dead franchise, and Jordan Peele, of course, from Get Out. Oh, it's amazing that the two of them are finally joining forces on to create a horror adaptation of a short that started off on YouTube. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, the democratization of filmmaking is real.
yeah. And I think it's just so cool that like that's the thing they're working on together. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah,
it speaks to both of their really awesome uh what's the right way to put it? That they're lending a hand to filmmakers who are finding their footing. I think that that is really cool. And like we've seen that with Jordan. We've seen it with Jordan and Sam. I mean, Sam with like Fede Alvarez and these filmmakers who
yeah.
started with shorts and then giving them an opportunity. Like it is very much something that they have tried to do, and I think that that's awesome. And it's crazy that this is the thing that they're both teaming up for. So
That's very true. And I mean, as long as the journey was, and I'm curious, did you guys already have a script when you pitched it out to them, or was it like, oh, we like the short, can you guys come up with a screenplay? What was that process like? The reason I asked this is because if you are somebody who makes short films, without, like, with no idea of whether this short will eventually work as a feature, is it
mhm.
good to just create the short just for that particular purpose, or would it be always better to have a bigger idea at the end of the tunnel and start off with the short?
I think
What worked for you guys?
for what so yeah, I think that's the probably the best way to answer it, because I think different methodologies work for different people. Like I wouldn't say
Yeah.
that you have to go about it the way that we did, but for me it was making a short and focusing on the short and not thinking about the feature. Um, I mean, on a personal like taste level, I respond to shorts that don't feel like they're proof of concepts.
Mm,
I like it when I'm watching the short. It feels like it is a self-contained short story, but it could lend itself to something bigger. Like to me, that's the sweet spot. But I think it's hard to reverse engineer. It's deceptively hard to reverse engineer a short film that's meant to be a feature. Um, and I think that can show sometimes in a negative way in the short when it feels like a teaser. It doesn't feel like it's a whole package.
true.
And so for me, in the case of Portrait of God, it was just trying to make a short, but knowing pretty quickly that, oh, there was something here. Like if I wanted to do something with this, I feel like this is a concept that could be explored in other stories. And so when I was approached by Sam and Joe to take it out to production companies, I had a pitch of sorts for them as to what I would do with it. I didn't have a script because, and I think it's great to have a script. If you have a script, like it only puts you ahead. In this case, I wasn't prepared at that point to show a script, so so we started to kind of run from that pitch I gave them. But then when you invite collaborators and you work with like a production company and there is no script at that point, uh, people are going to want to kind of find what version of it excites everyone, which is
Yeah.
how it should be. And so the pitch that I had is not the version we're ultimately going with, but there's a lot of pieces from it that have made their way into it. And I think it's partly because the version I had before was like, hey, if I'm going to do this with like 100K on my own or something like that, I'm going to design it that way. And since we have a little bit more to work with, we decided to try to look at what it might be without thinking from that more limited perspective. Um, so very long way of answering by saying I think it's appropriate to start in a place where you're focusing on the best short film possible, but it doesn't hurt to also then prepare for what someone could ask for from a feature.
I think I'd agree with that because, like you very correctly said, having a short as a self-contained story, like, it feels more complete than if you were
Hmm.
teasing something much bigger, and it kind of leaves the audience, yeah, sure, maybe probably wanting more, but it's like either like a hit or a miss. Like,
Yeah,
you can potentially fall flat. And the best, I think it's a testament to, in a way, showing your skill as a filmmaker and putting, like, going all in on one particular project and then putting it
yeah.
out there for an audience to see. I'm very curious. So I know Portrait of God was in a few festivals as well. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts on film festivals versus putting your film out on YouTube? The reason I ask this is because you have a few some filmmakers who would rather do a full festival run and then
Yeah,
release the short, whereas others they just chuck it up on YouTube or Vimeo or wherever.
yeah.
What what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's also a tricky answer because for me,
Mm,
it's been more helpful to put it online. But there's a lot of reasons that, like specifically from my experience, that was the case. One of which being like a lot of the shorts I did were around the kind of COVID time frame where if I
mm.
put it in a fest, I wasn't going to be able to go, or it was all going to be online anyways. In
I was
which
just
case, like,
thinking that it's very
yeah,
timely. The you make something and if you hold it back for like 2 or 3 years, it kind of loses its appeal and
yeah,
relevance also sometimes.
it definitely can. And there's also just a matter of like when you put it online, if it does find an audience, it is finding that audience directly. Whereas if you put it in a film festival, it's finding the film festival audience, and then you're
Yeah,
waiting and sitting with just that audience for like a year, or however long, or just those audiences if you have a festival run. But it's like a very specific group of people that get to see it, and like we're not making films for just the couple of screening rooms that see it. Like we want it to be seen by and accessible by
yeah,
anyone. And so like I think everyone eventually wants to put their thing online. It's just a matter of like opportunity costs. Like, am I actually missing out on, an executive who's going to be at a festival or a producer who's going to be at a festival? And the answer is you might be. And I think that's why it's tricky to know. I think if you can't go to those fests, I would definitely put it online. And that was a big reason for me, even beyond the COVID stuff. Like I was just like, I was in college or before college or right after college when I couldn't feasibly make a big trip and put myself up in a big
yeah.
festival. And so like what's the best case scenario? I get into a big fest and I can't go. Like, well, then I probably should just not do that. But at the same time, I think it's a little scary when you put your thing online because that's the end of the road, where it
True.
feels like if it doesn't connect online, well, now it's like it's seen the light of day and you can't really re-release it or put it into festivals. So I totally understand the anxiety around what to do with your project. But I think there's also like opportunities to put it online on like channels like Alter or what are some other big ones? Dust,
Crypt TV,
Crypt
Crypt TV.
TV.
Yeah,
Yeah, on the horror side, there's another big Amuleto.
Amuleto. Yeah,
Um, yeah, stuff like that. Like there are ways to put it online in a way that like gives you some kind of guarantee you'll have some amount of audience, assuming you
yep.
can get it picked up by those places. So I think you just have to assess for yourself like what your risk factor is, and your situation in that regard.
100%. Like, I think I've kind of, I've done the same thing that you've done for the longest time. Just create something and check it up on YouTube because I'd rather wait and not wait to get into festivals and not have it just be seen by that particular festival audience. Whereas online, like you very correctly said, you never know uh, who it can, like, whose eyes are on it.
Yeah,
And with this final shot that we've done, me and my team, we went the entire festival route. And in a way, like I started understanding why our producer he wanted to do a festival run. I was like, okay.
hmm,
And it was the laurels that we kind of racked up, which ended up with somebody coming on board and be like, hey, can you guys do like a feature version of this?
there
It's
you
like, okay,
go.
so
So it works out.
yeah,
It just depends. I mean, yeah. And I've talked to so many filmmakers uh, who say similar things, where it's like the entire path for their film and the entire way that they like got into the industry was through a specific festival. So it's like it's just hard to know. But
and it's never really like no two stories are the same. It's kind of like
yeah,
your fingerprints or snowflakes. It's very unique to every single person.
yeah,
And therein, I think, lies the beauty of it. Like, you can't necessarily take advice from somebody because you're not on the same path that they are.
yeah.
Like,
I'll even
everybody's got to
say
figure it
like
out.
as a random anecdote, I the feature film Smile, based
Hmm.
on Parker's short, Laura Hasn't Slept. That short was at South by Southwest, but it was in 2020, I believe, um, during COVID, and so he didn't get to go. But like
Hmm.
that festival still was a big part of what got it to a place where they made the feature and got attention for it. So like, as much as I'm saying, and we're talking about it now, but as much as I'm saying, like that, there's a risk to going to a festival and not getting it seen by the people you want to get seen by. Like, uh, he managed to make it work where he couldn't even go to the festival, and it still got picked up and all that. So it really is just very individual, what happens with your project.
Yeah, yeah. it's it is what it is, and I guess you just kind of got to roll with the project.
Yep.
Yeah. When I the first time I watched Portrait of God, the moment that had me was not when you see the figure that's being projected. It was off to the girl's
Hmm.
right, where you kind of see uh, the creature's eyes. I don't know if that was intentional or whether that was like light from something else, or
Yeah.
was
Do you
was
want me to
that?
say?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was definitely intentional. It's funny. There was
All
a
right.
bit. It does also, like, it does disappear. I mean, it's supposed
It
to be
it
subtle.
does.
So like, I'm actually
Mm.
glad that you're asking that. But also we did have a moment, like the way it was shot was a little bit more obvious at first, and then
Uh-huh.
I trimmed it down in the edit. But like, there was like a slight pan, just like a very slight pan in the shot on that moment where like you see it, and it
Yeah.
just drew too much attention to it. It was very slight, but it was still too much attention. And so I feel like the version now where it's like, oh, it kind of looks like lights in the background, um, is where it should have been the whole time. But yes, there is something there.
I think that was a very smart call because it disappears the moment she starts the presentation. I think it's
Yeah.
as if the is that God or is that a creature or some other entity? Like, what did you have in mind when you made the film?
um, that's definitely something that we're talking a lot about with the future. So I
Mm-hmm.
probably would uh, shouldn't say too much, but
Yep.
I will say it's very important to me that you don't know.
Mm.
Like, we have an idea of what we think it is, and in the short, I had an idea of what I thought it was, because I think it's important that as a writer, if there's any level of ambiguity, you should still know what your version of it is.
Yeah.
Because if you're not writing it with any version in mind, then it feels like it's a little bit like wishy washy. It's a little bit ambiguous in a way that's not, I don't know, intelligent. Whereas we did have an idea, and we're trying to make sure we're writing it with an idea of exactly what it is, and it can make sense with that in mind. But also, uh, that conversation about what it is very important, and is something that's talked about in the film. In the short, they don't really talk about what it is because there's not a lot of time to do that, and probably
Yeah.
shouldn't do it. But in the feature, that is a big topic of conversation, and that's kind of the best I can say.
This process of development, like you have a short that's out there and it's racked up around 8 million views, north of 8 million views, and that's a lot of eyes on a project. So when you are creating this feature version of it, like what has the expectation level? I know the audience has one, but for yourself as a filmmaker, where is that at, and what are the conversations that you are having, not with collaborators, but with yourself rather?
Mm. About what it should be, or about like uh,
Yeah, I
thinking about
think
expectations from other people.
expectations from other people, because at the end of the day, you are making a film that you want to put in front of an audience.
Hmm.
So the expectations by other people and also yourself, because it is your first feature.
Yeah, I think I think that's a really interesting thing about this process, because I've gotten a lot of feedback about the short, in both
Mm.
like inevitably there's some critical comments, right, that are like, oh well, I wish it had done this or that, and then there's positive comments that are highlighting
What
things they
what were
really
those?
liked about
I'm
it.
curious because
The
what
critical
were the ones that
things.
stuck with you? Yeah, what are the ones that stuck with you?
Well, things like the design of the entity
Mm.
is, not to someone's liking. It looks too much like this other thing. And to be clear, I think that there's a lot of valid criticisms in that department. A lot of those are things that I might agree with. Um, but then there's also like positives where someone will say the exact opposite, where they're like, I love the design, or it's reminds me of this specific quote. And so there's just such an influx of opinions on it that it's been interesting to parse through for me, and figure out like what do you actually take from that feedback into the feature. Um, and I think at the end of the day, like you can't go overboard in that department because you don't want to be like too reactionary and all that. But I think it's important. It's been helpful for me and important for me to look at those reactions and think about how I feel about them, generally speaking. Like,
Yeah.
what do I really like about the short that needs to be preserved for the feature? If there are questions in the short, which
Mm.
ones is it important that we don't answer in the feature? Because there's a lot of space to answer a lot of questions that the short leaves ambiguous, but we shouldn't answer them all. So, like, which do we, which don't we? So, there's a lot of questions about that I've had throughout the process, and it's changed over time. And I think the version we have now is kind of that comfortable balance for me of giving more, but also leaving the audience with just as much as they were left with at the end of the short. Um, yeah, so it's been interesting. I'm trying to think of any more profound way to talk about
No,
the
no.
expectation side of it, but
I
yeah,
think you really covered it. Because it's never easy taking feedback either. Like you see certain parts where, whenever I do something, I am highly critical of the final product.
oh
Like
yeah,
I'm very unable to watch it without rolling
yes,
my eyes. Yeah.
as it should
I'm
be,
pretty sure it's
unfortunately.
the same for you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then there are certain comments that you agree with, and then there are some you're like, okay. So, you know, you have the chance to redo it and you want to make it better. So it's kind of like a dilemma. Which ones do you pick? Which ones do you not?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So a
Yeah,
blessing and a curse.
100%. It's also very poetic that, for anybody who's going through Dylan's channel, go check out the making of Portrait of God. And what was poetic to me was the fact that you were playing God.
It's horrible. One of my biggest regrets. Oh, that's
Why?
a comment I get. Well, just because I get funny comments that are like, of course, he casts himself as God, like the ego on this guy. But the truth of it is that, like, we shot it with just a couple friends in the small college classroom. And in doing the entity, it
Mm.
was just like we need like a tall, skinny dude to come in and just stand here awkwardly in front of our actress for a couple hours. And we didn't, we weren't in a place to hire an actor who would just do that, like a character actor or anything. And so I really didn't want to be going around campus like looking for tall, skinny people and being like, "Do you want to stand shirtless in this room for like 3 hours with no pay, barely any food?" So I was like, I'll just do it. It'll take like 10 seconds. But now, yeah, now I'm cast as God in the film, which is like I have to live with that.
But how,
Anyways, that's
how,
me
how tall
defending
are you?
myself.
Because you were towering over her. Was it the fact that you're tall, or
Thank you. No, I mean we shot it in a particular way, but
gotcha?
I'm about to list both of our heights. Sydney, who's the girl in the film, there's probably like a foot height difference roughly. So it's
Oh,
not.
right.
Uh, it wasn't like that was helpful to some extent.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we could have gotten someone who was like 6'7", like the guy. Ooh, whoa, shouldn't have said that. The guy who's in Alien Romulus. Remember at the end of that
Oh,
movie where like it's
yes.
the basketball player or whatever.
Mm, yep.
Yeah, that would be the optimal guy to play that role.
Or else you could do it.
But yeah, true.
There's always that
Alas,
option, dude.
there is
There's always
always
that
that option. I think that will not be making it from future or from short to feature.
option.
I'm leaving that behind.
In that case, here's hoping that you cast Morgan Freeman as God.
Yes. See, there's other options, right? We could
Yep.
take it in a more profound way. That would meet audiences' expectations for sure, at least.
I'm gonna roll back a little bit. So when this short first went viral, what was it like? Like, was it like a gradual rise and then the gates blew open and made it went exponential, or did it like rack up waves steadily through time? Like, when was that moment, and what was it like being a filmmaker where you've been putting out short films for a while and then there's this one project which like
Yeah,
opens
it
everything up?
it was pretty gradual, all things considered. because I've had other shorts that I put out online, and some of them will, you know, come out with no views and just kind of linger in that space where it's very, very low. But others will have like a spike right out the gate. And I'm like, oh my God, this is going so well. And then it'll kind of plateau very suddenly and kind of linger in this space that ultimately doesn't get that much attention. This one was a case where it came out and it was pretty lackluster, honestly. Like I kind of thought that by releasing it online, I'd made a mistake because it came out and I think it got some amount of views, which was
Hmm.
great, but it had no spike. Like it was kind of sustaining something that wasn't great. And I think it was there for a few months. And like when we started developing the feature, I think it was at, and to be clear, not to scoff at this view count or anything, but it was at like 50,000 views when we started developing the feature. So it wasn't like it got to this insane place and that's what enabled it to be picked up.
Hmm.
Um, and then at some point over the next several months, uh, people started to, I think it was people sharing it, honestly, more than anything in this case, but also people reacting to it is a big part of like what contributed to spikes. And
Yeah.
then there's like the very mysterious YouTube algorithm where at some point along the way, like it was like, oh, actually, we're gonna like share this around on our own. So now it's at a place where it kind of hovers in a healthy range where it's getting a sustainable amount of views. But no, it was fairly gradual, and I think it probably after a year, I don't know if it even like had a million views. So it definitely took a bit of time.
Have you found that the number of views has corresponded to the project being received better in terms of it being developed as a feature, or has it hovered around the same recognition or treatment that it's gotten during the 50,000 view range?
Well, I don't think it's changed very much
Mm.
because since we started working with Ghost House around that earlier side, they were showing a lot of interest and enthusiasm at that point, and I don't think that changed. To their credit, like I don't think that changed along the way. I think where it was helpful was when we with Ghost House went out to sell it to other places and like uh, got started working with Monkey Paw and whatnot. We sold the project as like, hey, it's got this amount of views and like it's
Mm.
something that's gone viral at this point. And so that was helpful in terms of marketing the project wider once we wanted to send it out further. And by that point, it
Gotcha.
had gotten to that place. But that was more a level of, I'm not sure how much that helped or not. I mean, it definitely doesn't hurt, but I'm not sure if that was like a huge part of what got people
Yeah,
interested. It's a
gotcha.
good question.
It's probably not necessarily like a defining factor as most people. I mean, I thought it probably might have been. That's why I had
I
this on my
think
list of questions.
I think it definitely, if in that case, since we had Ghost House and we had a name behind it that was trying to sell it, I think that
Mm,
became the most important piece of what they were looking at. This
gotcha.
is my guess. Um, but I think if I were trying to sell it on my own with like my representation, just going out with like a script and there were no producers on board, then I think it would have made a much bigger difference to say, hey, this thing has a lot of interest
Mm,
online because they're trying. I think they're just trying to look for any amount of insurance that jumping onto this project is going to yield something. So yeah, I
yeah,
do think it counts for something, but I think a name can maybe count for more. So maybe they put that above it. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little mysterious to me as well.
yeah. I think at the end of the day, you never really know what propels that project from anonymity to what's the word? Popularity. It's
Yeah,
probably one factor. It could be multiple factors all working in tandem.
yeah,
Maybe it's just timing. Who knows?
yeah. I think it's a mix, like you
Yeah.
said.
With horror, I mean, this is the genre that you've chosen to play around in the most. Um, Horror and religion go hand in hand. And
Hmm.
why do you think that is? Are you religious?
I grew up agnostic. My family
Hmm.
was very agnostic, and I think that because I was not raised with a specific faith like shown to me, I think
Yeah.
that made me more interested in exploring religion more widely and like conceptually. Because I don't know exactly what it is, but I've always been interested in like religious studies. And when we made the short film, I was like taking an Islamic studies course at school. So like, just trying to kind of take whatever religious studies classes were available since I wasn't in the major. And I think for me, there's an interesting correlation between like obviously storytelling and religion.
Yep.
And there's a lot of scary shit in religion. Like, honestly, there really is. So, like, I think that there's something about that as well. Um, yeah, sorry, I'm running down the road with you just asked, am I religious? What was the broader question?
Like, why do you think horror and religion kind of go hand in hand? I think you are on the right track.
Yeah, well, I think
Yeah.
like I think it is just that these are stories that so many people believe to be real, and I'm
Mm,
not saying that they aren't, but that's just the reality. So many people think these things are real, and in these stories there is a lot of scary stuff, and also just the very nature of like the devil and demons and damnation and all these things. It is like the basis of all fictional horror for the most part.
mm,
Like it is the absolute extreme of evil, and I think that is again something that people believe is real, makes it like an obvious place to play in, not even just on a horror side, but like as it relates to villains across various genres. Like I think the closer a villain feels to the devil, the more scary it is, I think, because there's like a universal
yeah.
fear of that kind of thing, or a demon.
True.
um yeah.
Yeah, I think also whether you're a believer or not, like there's a particular, I think religion kind of uh, claims to provide the answer to what's beyond life, and
Yes.
it kind of answers that in a very binary way as well.
Yeah.
Binary, there some religions have a gray area, some have a
Yeah.
very binary way of putting it, and whether you believe in it or not, there you have that part where there's something beyond where you don't necessarily understand what's on the other side. Could be something, could be nothing, and
Yep.
therein lies its appeal and its, I think, intrinsic marriage with horror,
Yep.
the fear of the
And I
unknown.
think totally. And I think to go even further in that department, there's something, and to relate it to Portrait of God specifically, in talking about religious horror from the perspective of God or the concept
Mm,
of God rather than the concept of the devil. Well, first, that was something that I thought would be interesting because we see so much religious horror that's about demons and
yep.
the devil and priests and all these things. And like, can we talk about conceptually faith in God in a way that's removed from one specific religion?
Mm,
And to me, that's a conversation that's scary even for an atheist, right? The existence of God. Because if you're wrong, if you're an atheist and someone tells you God is real, then suddenly, oh my God, the implications of that, whether you're scared of God or not, the implications of God being real. And I say that like, an umbrella bird's eye view of what God is, because it
yep.
means very different things across religions. But I think the existence of like an absolute good or a creator implies the existence of the extreme evil
Yep.
that is in those stories as well. And so there's a lot of scary implications about that, seeking that answer that I thought would be interesting to explore in Portrait of God. Again, whether or not the entity is God, just seeking that answer, period, is something that I think is scary.
I think whenever, like, when you are doing this feature, there's a very fine line that I think you probably encountering this as you develop the feature. There's a very fine line that you can tread on before you realize, oh, I might be alienating a few people. I might be
Totally. Yeah.
angering some others. Like, don't want to run the risk of having your head end up on a platter.
Very much. Then this is a conversation we've definitely had, and I will say it's very much not our intention to alienate
Mm,
an audience. And I'll also say it's been interesting to see the response to the short, where I was very concerned about that when I released the short. I was like, oh my God, what am I about to do to myself here? But I've been pleasantly surprised that the reaction from the religious side has been interpreting the film, for the most part, interpreting the film in a way that is comfortable with their beliefs,
Yep.
and interpreting what she's seeing in a way that fits how they view the concept of God and whether the
Mm.
thing is God or isn't God. So, and that's a big part, I think, of leaving the interpretability and the ambiguity of this entity, preserving that for the future. I think is largely uh, in trying to make sure that we're not alienating that audience. Yeah, but it's definitely tricky. And I've gotten a couple. I will say I've gotten a couple of emails from people who are like, "This is blasphemous and this is horrible," and but literally only I think two out of the millions that have seen it. So it could be worse. And again, it's not my intention to provoke that.
At the same time, this is something that I've noticed, and I'm curious about your opinion on this. Like, when you are about to put something out there into the world, there's like maybe one or two things that you're really, really worried about, and then once it's finally out there, that doesn't seem to be the first thing, or maybe even the last thing that people sometimes care about. Like, you're like, oh,
What
okay.
the reaction, like that extreme reaction?
Yeah, I mean, well, you said you were worried about like what people, the religious community would
Yeah.
potentially say about the depiction of God, and
Hmm.
then it turned out to be, well, better than what you expected. And I've
Yeah.
had my experiences similarly as well. Like, I'm wondering, uh, what are people going to think about this particular scene?
Yeah.
And when I test it out, they're like, wait, what scene? Like,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
very, we're like we're focusing in on very specific things that maybe
yeah,
drive us nuts or we're anxious about. And then yeah, I've had that for sure with like little details where I'm showing a family member and they have no idea what I'm talking about when I ask them to like hone in on a specific thing. Like, all right, that's a sign. Yeah.
Your approach to horror, this is something that you mentioned in the making of videos as well, is to start off with your resources and then build up from there. Uh, how long have you been making films for in terms of like let's say the college years still now, and during that particular time, is there any has there been a period where you kind of broke that rule, or has it always been
Yeah,
that?
definitely have. And it's interesting because I there's a short that I shot last year, so it's just had a very long, kind of strange post process and festival run. So this is kind of a case study for how slow it can be when you're putting a film out in
Yeah,
festivals before online. But but that was an instance where, and I'm working on the behind the scenes right now, and I'm talking about this in the video, so it's actually very timely. But talking about like when you do have more resources to work with, like you are presented with an opportunity to work with materials that you didn't have before, it's an interesting jump to go from like that mindset that's so focused around building from materials you have to okay, write something, sky's the limit, and we have the money to find those things and make those things. It is a little bit strange to make that jump, and the way I think I think that there's a lot of things about the approach with the resource oriented, very grounded level that apply to that bigger process. Like I think when you're writing a script without thinking about those resources, um, you kind of have this moment of, well, how do I design a location that I can't actually see? Like you can see it in your head, but what if I'm location scouting and there isn't a door or there isn't a window exactly where it needs to be for the sake of the film? And it's like so pivotal for this moment in the film that like suddenly it feels impossible. It's a chicken and the egg situation. It feels like you
yeah,
run into a lot of chicken and the egg situations, and that's tricky. But I think like it's been helpful for me to get used to that and get used to being comfortable changing the script to reflect the location. Like you start in a place where sky's the limit, so to speak, and then you kind of are reined back in by the
yeah,
resources you realize you have. Like after that stage, you start hunting for the resources you actually can afford and you actually can get. And then you kind of start that process again before where you're like, okay, now I know what I have. I have the optimal version of the script. Now let's marry it and rewrite basically to best suit these locations. And I think there's so many examples of films being made better by like things that happen on set, like little things that are spontaneous or things that are brought by like the design of a creature that you didn't know you had before. So I think it's actually just like a nice evolution from that mindset, where that mindset comes right back in as soon as you're assessing the new things you have. But it's difficult at first to make the jump to writing something where you're not restricted by the resources on the page. Uh, yeah, it's interesting. Have you had that experience as well? Like, have you had
Totally.
that noticeable leap?
Yep. Yeah, I've had that leap. I think a couple of years ago, because uh, during the past 10 years, most of the projects I did were self-financed, and we
Yep,
started off from a point of I wouldn't say necessarily like the resources we had. I
yep,
would use the resources we had, and I would see what could I just go out and get, because I've always been interested in genre. So my genre of choice is action, and then I decided I'm gonna try horror. I'm gonna try sci-fi. I think sci-fi was the
hmm,
project where we had a producer come on board and he was like, okay, this is the budget, and nobody's necessarily getting paid, but you can use it to, you know,
yep,
uh, develop the movie and get and essentially put that into production. I was like, okay, that's great. Like that's way more than I've ever had with any other
yep.
project. And then therein kind of lies the dilemma of an overabundance of choice. Of
Yes, that's a great way to put it. It's a little paralyzing.
yeah, and then, like you very correctly said, you kind of come back to this same feedback loop of endless problem solving.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I've had my similar experiences as well. So I 100% uh, understand what you're talking about, and it really echoes with me.
Well, I think it's also funny that like when someone when you do have the opportunity to work with more money, you're like, "Oh my god, like this is
Mm.
game changing." And it is, but at the same time, as soon as you start to acquire the things that you need, you burn through that money so fast and you're like, "How did I possibly make something with less money before this?" And I think it really just comes back down to process where like
Yeah,
you're writing it without thinking about the resources, and so it costs a bit more to actually acquire or make those resources, but otherwise the process is very similar once you have them.
true.
Yeah.
We've come kind of like I was telling you earlier, we were in the stage where we had a financier, and then they kind of, like we were on shaky waters, and then my cinematographer and I, we decided, you know what, we budgeted to this amount first, but maybe we,
Hmm.
if you strip down certain things, we don't take any money out of it, like to pay ourselves. Like
Yeah.
there is a version of this that can be done with the bare minimum,
Yeah.
and it's kind of nice. It's kind of enlightening, I would say, to realize that you can do even like an action film. There are ways that you can strip away the
Yeah.
fluff
Hmm.
and ensure that you come up with a version of it which is quite minimal but raw. And
Hmm. Hmm.
perhaps it could end up more authentic too. I don't know,
Yeah.
but
I think a lot of times when you're forced to strip it back, it helps, even if it feels so painful sometimes in the moment. Like even when you're on set and you're running out
yep.
of time, and it's like we have to combine these two shots. I
Mm,
think most of the times combining the shots makes it better, but it feels
yeah.
horrible because you're like, no, it's designed this way. I want to do it this way. But yeah, it's
Have you had
interesting. It's
these?
difficult.
Sorry, have you had these
Oh no, you're
moments
good.
where you're like, I think I came to this point, me and my cinematographer, where we were talking about this project, and we were like, you know what, like it's very similar to the version that I had in my mind, but then again, nobody on Earth is ever going to see the film that I had in my mind, so it doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily like I don't need to be too anal about certain things.
Yeah, yeah, you're the only one who can compare it to that version that
Exactly,
you wish you had been able to do.
and I think that's where the hypercritical cynic comes out
Yeah,
for most creators.
yeah. I had a moment with Portrait of God like that. I mean, I feel like we all have a bunch of moments like that
Hmm.
on every project, but there was one in particular that, like, with enough distance, I've been able to look back on and like realize how just like over critical I was of what we got in the moment. The moment at the end where it's the last shot in the film where she's silhouetted by the projector and she's holding the necklace and she's crying and she smiles. It's something where like I had such a clear idea of what that shot should look like.
Mm.
And when we shot it, I remember looking at it in camera and being like, I'm gonna have to live with this. This is not it at all, but I'm gonna have to live with it. And now when I look at it, I'm like, what the hell could I possibly have wanted? Like this is exactly like it's
What
just I
works?
can't I don't remember what yeah, it's totally fine the way it is. And I don't remember what I had in my head anymore that like was killing me in comparing it. But it's
That
just
is
a good
so
example.
true. That is
Yeah.
so true because after a while, when you're in post and then you try to recall what you initially had in mind, you're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, yeah. So that's at least, comforting to some extent.
Yeah,
Sometimes it just takes some time away from it, but
100%. Is that a it poster over there on your
yes,
left?
it's funny.
Yeah,
I was like, are you going to be able to tell just from that little? Yes, it is. I'm a big
I mean,
fan.
it's
You got
so
any
iconic.
posters? It is iconic. I just
Yeah,
finished the show as well, so we've gotten our recent dose of Bill Skarsgård Pennywise.
I
But
I, I haven't hopped on that on the show just yet. My wife and I recently introduced my wife to the two It movies, and she
oh,
liked it way
nice.
more than she thought she would. So we're gonna hop on this next.
Nice. They're fun. They're definitely fun. They're the kind of things that like my parents enjoy, which is shocking. So I don't know about the show. The show's kind of intense. The show's a bit more
Really?
intense than yeah. The scary scenes are more intense, I think, than the
Hmm,
movies. Surprisingly, um, but if you're into that, it's fun. So
for sure. I'm gonna check it out. Anyways, the reason I brought up it was so you love the movie. What's your
yes,
favorite? Who's your favorite horror movie villain, entity, anti-hero?
that's a good question.
Okay,
Ooh,
I'll give you top three.
yeah, please. Oh, well, I also want to know yours. I wonder if it'll spark for me, but um, actually, can I flip it back on you first? Is that
Sure,
appropriate?
that's fine. I love Dracula,
Yep.
Pennywise,
Yep.
and third, what is the entity in Evil Dead?
The the Kandarian demons, I guess. There you go. That's
Yeah,
nerdy as hell, but
yeah,
um,
yeah.
yes.
Those are my
Okay, so
three.
yeah, the Evil Dead, but the Deadites, like the demons.
Yep,
Any of
the
those.
the Evil Dead. Well,
The
whatever.
Evil Dead. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
there. That's the perfect way to put it. Yeah. Okay, cool. I mean, I love all those.
Hmm.
Ghostface is probably up there, like original Ghostface.
From Scream.
Loves everyone loves Scream, but
Yep.
I this is a weird one because
Hmm.
it's so ill defined in the original in a good way. But like the Blair Witch, I love the mythology of that, and
Mm,
though we don't see that entity, like just
yeah.
that the concept. I'm a huge like witch fan, like any witchy things.
Hmm.
Like with weapons last year, Gladys was such a fun villain. Like I'm such a sucker for like a kind of
Oh,
classic feeling witch. Um,
yes.
what else? Pennywise, yeah, that's up there for sure. I'm trying to think of slashers because well, I guess
That's
Scream
already
is
that's already three, but
that's three.
please carry on. Carry on.
See, I'm
Carry on.
gonna get carried away. No, 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 no. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. But there's a bunch.
Weapons was very interesting because I remember looking. I had this book, Myths and Demons, or something like that when I was a kid, and I remember seeing like zombies and like I think
Mm-hmm.
it comes the legend comes out of Africa, and the
Mm-hmm.
picture that the image that I remember was this African guy, a guy with bulging eyes, and
Mm-hmm.
when I watched Weapons, I was like, that's a zombie, right? Because it
Yeah.
really like it was like
Well,
the spitting image of what I saw years ago, and then the witchcraft kind of thing
right.
where you have somebody puppeteering a person. That's what a zombie is, I guess.
Is
Like
that the?
voodoo through voodoo, or I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to go
Yeah.
back because I do remember. It's funny. It's been a long time, but maybe I had a similar book or something. But I remember looking at like zombie mythology at some point,
Mm.
and it's what you're saying sounds familiar, but I can't remember if the is the undead component of zombies something that came later in pop culture, because that's
Good
where
question.
I don't know about the
Yeah,
distinction. I don't know if that's like a movie thing and like the actual mythology was more of like a curse thing. Um,
could be because I feel
we got to
like
brush up.
George Romero was the one who kind of
Yeah,
popularized zombies back in the 60s,
yeah,
and
like the
that
undead.
yeah, the undead version of it probably. Who
I
knows? I
think that's
mean,
right.
things have evolved so much. Like it's fun to trace back to its origins.
It is. No, that's a fun one though. Like the bulging eyes is such a striking thing in that movie. Um, that it's interesting to think about where that came from. I mean,
Yep.
I think there's a strong possibility for him it came from just like, hey, that's a scary thing. Like conceptually, it's scary because it is a scary thing. But it's cool to think of like, yeah, where that's been done before and where that originally had been done mythologically. That's cool.
You mentioned Blair Witch as an influential film. What others do you think would you pick to from whatever you've seen to be like, okay, these are the films that I would say influenced my creations the most. I don't know how if that came out probably, but what?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to ask the cliche version of what are the
Favorite.
most influential horror movies that you have or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Blair Witch is definitely a big one. A lot of witchy things. I love The
Which,
Witch. um, I think like honestly, like in terms of the religious horror, uh, that movie, like the influence on Portrait of God and my affinity for religious horror, that movie, the Robert Eggers movie, was a big
hmm,
part. That's like one of my favorite horror films. I just love that movie. Um,
please don't say
but
Witches of Waverly Place.
yes, literally any witch thing. I'm gonna start. It's gonna go downhill from here. Um, No, no, those are the only two witchy things I think I would cite. I mean, truly, like it's not a feature, but I will say again, like the David Sandberg short films were such a big part of my development as a short horror filmmaker.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, also like what James Wan was doing was a big was very influential for me growing up because those are like some of the those franchises that he pretty much all started. Um,
Yep.
were very much the things I was watching growing up. I'm trying to think of features though. I'm this is less. This hasn't made as much of an influence on the films I'm doing now, but it very much is something I would like to be doing more of. But Del
Hmm.
Toro and like his kind of more gothic, like
Mm.
fantastical horror is something I respond to very strongly, and I think
Yeah.
that it drives me nuts a little bit. The fact that it's so hard to do on a lower budget because it is so like visually rich and like the makeup effects and the sets
Yep.
it's all so expensive feeling in a good way, and that's what I love about it. But I haven't quite been able to do a lot of that yet, and I would love to do more of that. So that's definitely been influential. There's a couple of shorts where like there's a couple images that are trying to dip my toe into a little bit of that, but it's harder to do that at this level. So yeah, I guess those couple names and movies are up there. Pan's Labyrinth specifically, I think on Del Toro's side is the one I would list. So
I love the fawn, like the design and
yeah,
the
yeah, just
engineering
everything about
behind
that
how
world.
they did. Yeah, everything was like
Yeah,
s- so well done. Like you
yeah,
very correctly said, so rich.
yeah,
Um, Story time.
yeah.
I loved it, and
Thank you.
I watched it today
Oh,
because
nice.
yeah,
Headphones
it's
on,
headphones
proper.
on. Yep,
Nice.
and it's it was on my watch list for a while, and I don't know why I put it off, but I think it kind of like I could relate to it very well because whenever I work now, I have some sort of horror podcast playing in the background talking about like skinwalkers, so witches, so
Nice.
werewolves, something like allegedly true stories, and then you take this concept of podcasts
Hmm.
and you bring it into real life as the person's listening and it's happening to them. Like, thank you so much for giving us like a permanent fear of listening to podcasts like ever again.
Yeah, of course. We gotta. I feel like horror is all about ruining specific things, like ruin the water with Jaws, ruin podcasts with this something more mundane. But
But where did that concept come from? Like, I'm curious what your thought process was coming into it.
that was another concept that came specifically from like the resources where we made Portrait of God like a year before that or something like that, and I worked with some voice actors on Portrait of God, and I had a really good experience. And some of the voice actors, and I also saw other short films that were using voice actors in an interesting way in between.
Hmm.
And I thought to myself, like, I wanted to do something that had more of a vocal performance in it. I know that's oddly specific, but like a lot of the shorts I've done are people alone, so there's not a lot of dialogue. And I wanted to do something that like could have a performance that's having fun with dialogue. Uh, and one of the earliest things I thought of was like, yeah, like a rich kind of deep like British narrator, and like if we could get someone who's a great voice actor to come in and do that, how could we make them like the driving force of the horror in a short film? And on a production level, like that means you're just finding someone online, and then there's nothing on set, right? Like it's just like it's a resource that is very cost effective. Um,
Yeah.
and minimalist, and it's a lot of implication, which I think is very effective in horror. Where like, can we do a short where we actually never see the spooky thing, right? In Portugal, like it's obscured, which is like right on the edge, but in this, it's like we never like take the sheet off of the
Yeah.
entity and like show the thing, and it was a fun challenge to see if we could do a more audio based horror short that never goes too far in the visual department, but feels just as scary and kind of visceral um, as something that would be more visual. Uh, so yeah, it was a bunch of those things, but really trying to do something with a voice actor and being more audio centric in general.
Fantastic. Uh, are you planning on doing more horror shorts, or have you completely made the switch over to features?
I, like you were saying, I've done a good amount at this point, and I have been of the mindset of like, I'm done. I want to do some, I want to make the next step. But at the same
Always a
time, like,
but.
there's always a but. Well, there's a short that I'm finishing up, or that is done, but we're putting online. It'll be online next month, actually. So that's pretty soon. But after that point, like, there's a lot of time in between as you're like
Mhm.
developing and writing and doing all these
Yep.
things. And it's hard not to feel like, oh, but what if we did this one little thing? Like you always have an idea that's like, no, it's not a feature, but like it would be cool to do this one thing.
Yeah.
And I would be surprised if I didn't cave to that desire to make something like that. Is it the same for you, or do you feel like you're strictly like, okay, I'm putting that stuff down for now?
So I made a very definite statement saying that I am done with shorts,
Yeah,
and I mean I want to stick to that for
yeah,
sure. But then the last shot that I did, I worked with this guy who was really good at animation, and he turned
mm,
like we had an animation sequence. You'll see it. I'll send you the
yeah,
link. And he did it like a single guy did it after like a team of 3 or 4 people kind of mocked up the first version. I was
hmm,
like, hey, this guy like turned it around in like 2 months, and like with with more time and a budget, like what could he do?
yeah,
So, and animation is
cool.
something I've never tried before, so I'm like, maybe I
That
will
sounds
make an
so
exception
fun.
for an animated short. So
That would be really cool.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't dabbled in animation at all, but like that's a great example of like the kind of thing I'd be like, oh, but I'd love to do that. Like, why can't I also do that? That's awesome. I hope you do that. That'd be super cool.
Thank you. Yeah. So, with all the experience that you have had in the past, all the past years that you've made films and put it up on YouTube, on festivals, and with Portrait of God getting turned into a feature, what would you say? What would you tell a filmmaker who's following in your footsteps? What's the advice that you'd give them?
This is always a really tricky question because I feel like my instinct is to just like word vomit 1,000 different possible things that I would do. But I
Okay,
think,
I'll make it
oh,
interesting. Sorry,
okay, no,
I'm
go for
gonna
it.
make it interesting using just one word.
Okay, let's see if this makes it harder or easier.
Mhm.
It'll be more effective though.
I'm limiting your resources. Something you're very familiar with.
Yes, this is good. Maybe like it might have to be more than one word, but I'll keep it very
Okay,
small.
3 words. 3 words.
I think 3 words. Damn it. See, I can't practice what I preach apparently. Um, I would say, okay, I'm gonna do like a sentence or two. I'll keep it in the spirit of that.
Okay.
I think it's important to let people know who you are as a filmmaker, because and we haven't talked about this very much. Okay, so that's my answer. Now I'm
Mhm.
gonna just talk vaguely
Okay.
and pretend I'm
Okay.
keeping on the assignment. I think that for me, it has been very helpful to put stuff online under a channel that is my name and allows people to associate my work with me. That's something that like is has been surprisingly fruitful as far as like, and it has been on the feature side too. Like when you're meeting people, they want to get to know who you are as a filmmaker in terms of like the executives and anyone who might give you money. Like they want to know who you are and what you're going to do with it. So like your work can speak for itself to some extent, but I think the more you can do to draw people to draw an association for people between your work and you, um, it does a lot. And I think that can look like, putting stuff on your own channel and branding the channel as you and getting to know people through the channel. Like for me, the behind the scenes videos has been helpful. Like I've had people I'm working with now that have directly cited the behind the scenes videos as like, hey, we really responded to the fact that you like made something like this. And so I think as much as you can communicate with your audience as a creator, it goes a long way. And I've seen other filmmakers who are kind of blurring the line between like content creator or like a personality online and filmmaker. And I think that only helps you as far as like exposure and making people want to support you as a creative and your projects. So that's something I'd say as like maybe the most interesting piece that we didn't discuss that I would advise for up and coming filmmakers. There's the super long winded answer as if I did it in one word, but I think that probably would be the most succinct thing.
Very solid advice.
Thanks.
Very
Hopefully.
solid advice. I'm not even kidding. Like I'm at a stage in my career where I wish I knew that earlier.
Yeah. I
So
I do think it's the
yeah.
kind of thing that's helpful to know earlier specifically.
Mm,
I think when
yep.
you're at this point, if I hadn't been doing it as long as I had, it'd be very difficult to start at that point because then I'm
True.
putting stuff online to a channel where no one knows what the channel is or who I am. And it does feel like shouting into the void. So I think the earlier you start with that and you build that community,
Yeah.
make yourself the platform that's releasing your own stuff, if possible, it can go a long way.
100%. Dylan, thank you so much for
Thank you.
taking the time to come and speak to us. This has been amazing, and wishing you all the very best with the release of the upcoming short, and of course, the feature Portrait of God. Absolutely cannot wait to see what you do next, man.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, maybe we'll talk again on the flip side when we both have our first features done.
First feature's done.
Yep,
That's
2026.
that's a deal.
That's a deal. Yeah, hold me
That's a
to it.
deal. Will do.
Well, sweet. Thanks again, man.
Thank you so much.